Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You guys always say thank you for having me, but I wouldn't be anything without my guests here. I would be kind of boring speaking alone. So thank you for being here again, Nancy. It's a real pleasure to have you. I was scrolling down our past messages on Instagram, and I could tell earlier that I tried to get you on the show very early. It was in 2020. You were super busy, but super nice to answer me straight away. And then time and life happened. So it's here. We're here. We make time.
Yes.
So why don't you introduce yourself, please, and tell us who you are and Fête in France, your business, what it's all about.
Wonderful. My name is Nancy LaTart, and I am the owner and primary planner of Fête in France, which is a wedding planning agency based here in Paris that specializes in multi-day wedding celebrations for an international clientele. The majority of my clients are American couples who live in major American cities: New York, Washington D.C., Boston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, as well as Texas and Chicago and other major cities. And I've been doing this for more than 15 years now. It's been quite an adventure, and it's been really fascinating to see the industry grow and develop and change over the years. But it's something that I've now done for the longest period of time in my career, and I never would have expected it, but it's been really a very happy accident of getting into this business.
So where are you from exactly in the U.S.?
I grew up in the Midwest, outside of Chicago. And so that's really where I spent the majority of my childhood. And I also went to undergraduate university in University of Illinois, which is a big state university in Illinois. I started my career in the corporate world and worked for about 5 years in the corporate world.
Okay.
And for me, though, the draw to come to France was always present.
That's my question. That's my big question. It's not an interview, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just being curious too early in the conversation.
No,
we'll get there.
That's right. But for me, coming back to France and getting to France and getting set up here was definitely a driving theme in my young career.
Okay.
And it took a few steps to get here, but I've been here now for nearly 20 years.
Wow. And you're bilingual. You speak French fluently.
Yes, I speak French fluently. It's something that I had as a very big goal for myself. I studied French from the age of 11, 12 years old.
Wow.
And I had an aunt who was a French teacher, and I think she was the one who initially planted the seed. And so French just was always my thing. I took classes and studied it throughout high school and in college. And when I knew that I was going to university and they had an exchange program, I went straight away to the study abroad office even before my freshman year to say, I want to study abroad. What do I need to do? And the woman there said, well, come back and see me in about a year and a half. And in the meantime, study hard, do well in your classes, and then we'll talk. So coming to Paris during my university studies was really a decisive moment in my life, and I spent a year in Paris and just had the best time and was truly happy and knew that it was going to be the place that I returned to. I just had to figure out how to get here.
Sure. The opposite happened for me because I'm born and raised here in Paris, and then I moved abroad. I lived in Los Angeles for a time, and it's funny how you describe your image of France earlier. Your eyes are full of dreams when you were talking about it. I can definitely tell the same thing for the US, which sounds a bit different for you, I guess, being American, but all the French people, when we get to Los Angeles or New York, all these dreams that we had, the American dream and all that, but also we grew up with the American culture.
Of course.
So when you get there as a European, as a French person, as a Parisian, you kind of feel that you've been there before.
Completely.
You know what I mean?
I've heard this from other French people as well.
You know everything. You know the streets. You know the yellow cabs.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
The palm trees in LA sounds familiar. So I understand the opposite. So it must be different for you, but.
Yes. But it's very true that when you have had the experience of seeing the imagery and through films and through TV shows all of these years. My partner is French, and he grew up obviously watching American movies and TV shows. And I remember him saying, going to New York, it really felt like he was seeing a place that he was familiar with already. And me being from Chicago, we went to Chicago and he visited the city with me, and for him, Chicago is his favorite American city because it felt a little bit more like a discovery of the United States and of another big American city that was unfamiliar to him, but he really enjoyed the feeling of seeing the skyscrapers and feeling the ambience of the city that is maybe less visually known than cities like Los Angeles or New York.
This must be awesome for you, being an American, living in France for so long, so you know exactly the truth when you watch Emily in Paris.
Yes. It's true. Maybe I could say I'm the original Emily in Paris because I'm from Chicago, and business background, etc. But I did speak French before coming over.
Amazing.
I learned French and now master French, which we cannot say the same for Emily, unfortunately.
Of course.
But
French is a hard language as well.
It is, but I think that it's just like anything. Some people have an easier time learning a language. They have more. It's easier for them to adapt and to have the musical ear, the ear that's required to understand the language. But what's true is that with Emily in Paris, there are all these iconic landmarks that she visits and all these different places, and I just spend the entire time that I'm watching it. Oh, I know this place. I know this place. I know this place. It's my own little I know. It's a lot of fun looking at that and picking out all the places, and then the ones that I don't know, figuring out where was it that they were filming.
So you came to France originally to study?
I came to France originally to study with an exchange program. So my university had an exchange program with l'ESCP, which is one of the French business schools. And during that time, I had the fall semester, I was in classes with the French students. And then in the second part of the year abroad, I had an internship with a French company. And that was really a very formative time for me, especially in terms of learning the language and becoming fluent. I lived with two other American students who are also from my university, and we had different experiences in the internships that we had. So I had an internship where I was in a small French company, but I was the only intern arriving at that time. And I was able to make French friends in the company, and so I would spend my lunches with them. And it was really the immersive experience of being in the office, speaking, hearing French all the time, and so
the culture
as well, and so that was really immensely helpful in getting me in helping me become fluent, because I'd spent all of these years learning academic French. Then I arrived and I was in classes and I was hearing French every day, and it was extremely overwhelming.
Of course.
But I think that was very important in getting the French inside my head and inside my ears every single day. And then being in the office setting and having the social setting of colleagues and the work really is what helped my language, my spoken language, improve greatly. And the two other women who I was living with, my roommates, they had, one of them was in a very small office where it was just her and her boss, and he wanted to speak English all the time. So her French really only improved up to a certain point. And then the other woman who is with us had a lower level of French at arrival, and I think she also, in her internship, it was pretty much exclusively English, and so her French unfortunately did not improve really at all. So for me, it was the combination of being extremely motivated to become fluent, but then also having the right setting and the right environment for that to really foster and grow. And I'm really incredibly thankful for that. But but it's something that I was very driven to do, and something that I kept up even after I returned to the U.S. and finished university and started to work. I always sought out opportunities where I could speak French with other French people or other Francophiles.
Very good. Amazing. And then what happened? What is the gap between coming back to the US and then being a wedding planner with 18 years of experience? We have to go through this.
Yes. So after the year abroad, I returned to the US and had reverse culture shock. I had this amazing transformative experience, and I went back to my university, which I had great friends and I really enjoyed my university experience, but I left this place that had really put a big mark on my life, a positive mark on my life. So so that was a hard, senior year of university was hard, but I got through it. I graduated, and I started working in the corporate world, first up in Minneapolis. And there was a company called Target, which is a major mass retailer in the United States. And they had a big recruitment program out of the universities in the Midwest, and it was a fantastic first professional experience. I worked with a lot of young graduates, and there was fantastic ambiance. Target at the time was a really attractive company to work for, and it was not only a great professional experience, it was also a cool place to work. And so that was really wonderful. But Minneapolis, I knew, was not my final resting place for the rest of my life. And so
you knew that already.
Yes. I think I recently saw a former colleague of mine, and he this is 20 years later, and so we met here and we walked around Paris, and he said, okay, I get it now. You always talked about wanting to be in Paris, and we always said to ourselves, what are you doing here in Minneapolis? And I see you here now, and everything makes sense. So so that was a first professional experience, and then I moved back to Chicago. After that first professional experience, to have a second professional experience at a company called Walgreens, which is another major retail chain in the U.S. And their headquarters are outside of Chicago. And what was nice is that was a coming home of sorts. All of my friends from university lived in the city, and they were all starting to get married, and so it was my opportunity to spend some time with them, be close to my family, because I knew that ultimately my next step was likely going to be going to France.
You knew it at that point.
Yes, I did. I had
crazy how life works, right?
Yes, well,
you feel it inside.
Yes, and it was also because I had heard about a school called INSEAD. So INSEAD is an MBA program that is based in Fontainebleau. They also have a secondary campus in Singapore, as well as other campuses around the world now.
Interesting.
But it's a international MBA program. And a friend of mine, one of my best childhood friends, had been working in a recruitment agency in London, and she was seeing all of these CVs with this school called INSEAD on it. And it's not a school that has a great name recognition, but it is a very well-ranked and well-respected business school. And she mentioned it to me and said, you should really take a look at this school. I think it would be really interesting for you.
Smart.
And so I looked at it and I said, great, that's what I'll do. So, of course, the route to pursuing an MBA, has several steps. You have to take the GMAT, which is the a sort of entrance exam. You have to prepare an application, and it's a selective school. But fortunately, my hard work and diligence paid off, and I was admitted to INSEAD, and that was my ticket back to coming to France. So pursuing the MBA and doing that program was, for me, obviously, an important step in my career and an idea of consolidating my business knowledge, but also I knew it was a ticket back to France.
What year was this?
This was in 2005.
2005, okay. Yes. So I can see the steps going to today. And then?
And then a year at INSEAD, which was incredible. I met some really amazing people, really smart people from all over the world. And it was a very invigorating and stimulating environment. It was intense in all the different dimensions because it's a quite concentrated program in terms of time. Most American MBAs, for example, are 2 academic years.
Yes.
And INSEAD is 10 months. So so I started in September and I graduated the following June, July.
Wow.
And but it was great because it means that you're out of the job market for less time.
Very quick.
And so so that was, I thought, a real advantage. And I knew that it was going to help me develop a network to be able to find a job in France, which was my objective.
Okay.
So
I can tell.
So doing the MBA was really a key step in getting myself set up and and moved over here. And it's funny because this was 2005. Obviously, the internet existed. There were websites like Monster.com that existed to help you with a job search, but the way of finding work has changed to such a huge extent now. I've been talking with other people who are either remote workers or have been able to move over with because they're travel planners or they're content creators or all these types of work that didn't really exist back in the day.
Of course.
And so for me, it made sense, and it was definitely an entry point to be able to do this MBA and to be on site and to have the right network to be able to find the level of work and the type of work I wanted to find after graduating. So that first step after the MBA was a strategy consulting firm, a small French firm that is based in Paris near the Arc de Triomphe.
Okay.
And it was a
nice start.
Yes, it was a great, it was a great first start. I, was able to get me set up in a very comfortable way in Paris, and it was, a great learning experience. Ultimately, not the right fit and not totally my cup of tea, but it's hard to say that I regret that experience because, it was a great first experience after the MBA. It was, really interesting and varied work, but it was, sometimes it's just not the right fit, and that's all right. So after that first experience, I was relaunching my job search and trying to build some momentum around what I was going to do next. And this is, unfortunately, in 2008. And in 2008, in the fall, when I should have been, gaining some traction and sort of hitting a stride of recruitment, soon after the rentrée of 2008, is when Lehman Brothers imploded, and the credit crisis and the housing bubble collapsed, and the world economic outlook was quite dire, and that really had a huge influence on recruitment and hiring, and everything just froze.
Right.
So during this time, I had become friends with my former business partner, who is the founder and the creator of Fête in France.
Okay.
And so she was the one who had created the agency and had and sort of gotten the first season underway. And in 2000, so that was in 2006, 2007 being the first wedding season, and in 2008, I had some free time, and we had become friends and would chat about the business, and I would give her some, my 2 cents of consulting advice. And so I started helping her on some of the events in the fall of 2008.
Okay, so this is where.
And so that is the entry point into the world of wedding planning.
Got it.
So, so she had started this entrepreneurial venture. Her husband was in my class at INSEAD, and that was originally how we had met. He's French, she's American, also speaks fluent French, and so it was an easy, she was an easy friend to make.
Of course.
Being, I came to Paris, she came to Paris, we didn't really know very many people, and so, we would get together and have nice dinners and go to museum expos and discuss, our lives and what was going on. And so I helped her on a couple of events in the fall of 2008. And it went well, and I thought it was that was fun, and didn't really give it much more thought than that, because I was still very focused on my continuing my corporate career and making my way in a big company, and even though INSEAD is a school that has a very strong entrepreneurial fiber to it and entrepreneurial spirit, it wasn't something that I necessarily it wasn't one of the reasons that I chose that school.
Okay.
In specific, but it's true that there are lots of great entrepreneurs that have come from the school, and there are lots of people who go on to become entrepreneurs after graduation or at some point in their career. So we get to beginning of 2009, and it's crickets and tumbleweeds. Nothing is happening on the recruitment and the recruitment side of things, and I was looking at a year of not really finding a job, and it was at that point that Anne asked if I wanted to consider joining her, and what we could make of the company, and I really had to mull it over, and it was something that I didn't immediately say yes to, because
you look like the kind of person who would say yes directly. So explain me why you didn't do it.
I think that it was because I had never imagined myself as as an entrepreneur.
Kind of imposter syndrome, or just something that you didn't want to do?
It was more of I thought I knew what my path was supposed to be.
Okay.
I thought I knew what the steps were going to be in the career that I had mapped out for myself. And I think that it was also maybe giving myself permission to do something different and kind of go off, on the
traditional path.
Off the traditional path. And I think that was there was a little bit of a recalibration of can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? Do I want to do this? And so when I started to mull it over and kind of dissect these different things, I realized that one, there was relatively little downside to saying yes to this, because I knew that the job market was not great, that it was unlikely that I was going to find something in the immediate term, and it was helpful to have a project that could fill my time and that I could contribute to, and I could say that I did something qualitative with the time that I had.
Absolutely.
So
I agree a lot with this American spirit. As you know, being in France, it's not the same, French entrepreneur thing. So
no,
I like this vibe.
Yes. So I think that it was. So once I kind of mulled that over and could turn things around and look at it from different angles, I said, okay, I can. I'm going to allow myself to do this. I can do this, and this is something, let's try it. And always with the idea that, especially at the very beginning, well, I'll just wait until the market comes back, and then
here you go.
And then go into something else. But once you have a taste of the entrepreneurial environment, and you are mistress of your own destiny, and you are doing all these different things that you do in the course of a day when you are running a business, but then also the type of work that it is that we were doing, which was working as much in French as it was in English, doing things that were project-based, that had a beginning and an end, but had a tangibility to it in a way that my consulting work, my strategy consulting work, was very conceptual and never really concrete. I really enjoyed all these different elements and different, kind of touche de couleur that contributed to something that really suited me quite well. And then I quickly came to the realization that I just kind of fallen a little bit by happy accident into something that really was a great fit for me.
Of course, this is how it started.
Yes.
I think it's very interesting, because I was asking you earlier if you had this kind of idea of, can I do that? Can I allow myself to do it?
Yes.
more precise and makes more sense. I had this. I came up by coincidence in the wedding world. I was telling you earlier that I had a hospitality and restaurant background,
Okay.
and I stumbled upon weddings because of the coincidence. I was working in a place, and we were catering for big weddings, destination Americans, and I met a celebrant 10 years ago, Paul, and he introduced me into this world by coincidence, and I had the same thought process as you were talking about. Like, am I allowed? Can I do this? Like, is this me? And all that. You always have this weird idea of yourself, which doesn't make really sense. So it's nice that you followed it.
Well, and it's I think it's really important when you have these things, these little windows or these doors that open up a crack, and you decide to go through it and see what's behind that door, because so often you might hold yourself back because of fear or uncertainty or whatever else 100%. Might be hanging you up. And so I think that it's obviously, to anyone who's made that step, it's to your credit that you kind of you took the step and you took the leap of faith.
Leap of faith, absolutely. So you start this. You like it?
Yes.
And then?
So this is now 2009, and it's also important to remember that this is 2009. So Facebook has been around for a few years. Instagram is not yet on the scene, but soon to come. The idea of wedding publications, particularly wedding blogs, is starting to gain traction, and so the availability and access to information about planning a destination wedding is starting to become more available.
Sure.
And so because the agency was started in 2006 and the first season was in 2007. And all these different ingredients were kind of coming together, where we were able to ride this wave of people wanting to do a destination wedding. Destination weddings had already become a regular question that people would ask themselves, but more so, in Hawaii or in a warm destination if you were from the north, or kind of something that was closer to the Caribbean, for example, something closer to home for the Americans. And so the idea of doing a destination wedding in Europe, was starting to gain traction and was aided by not only the accessibility of information through the internet, but also the visibility of the content, the visual content through wedding blogs. And that was a huge vehicle for creating visibility and creating the desire for couples to come over and have their wedding in France.
The top,
And so we got our start with a lot of elopements and small weddings, and we really took things step by step. So we built the business and had really a huge amount of initial experience in small, intimate weddings.
Sure.
And I think that's really what was a huge help to us doing the job better once we got to do bigger weddings, is because you already had a base of experience and a base of knowledge, because doing this type of work, so much of the expertise comes in having a base and a foundation of experience, and being able to anticipate as much as possible. And what helps in anticipation of problems that could come up is having done a lot of things and having a lot of data points in the past. So I often talk about enhancing our internal algorithm. And so with each wedding we enhance our internal algorithm of how to do better and how to continue to raise the bar and serve our clients better. And I think that by having that that big base of experience of these small and intimate weddings was a huge help in that.
I've been hearing a lot of American clients, American vendors working in France, struggling to understand really our culture, which is great. Can be problematic sometimes.
Yes.
Especially when you want to have answers right now from, for example, venue owners. How do you deal with that?
So I have a unique perspective, having lived here for close to 20 years now, and also having, I guess the American original formatting, if you will. And so I really view myself as someone who's able to bridge the cultural gap and the language gap, between the two sides. So oftentimes we're dealing with time difference, but there's also, a certain sense of time and a sense of response times that is very different here than it is.
You're saying it very nicely.
Well, I've been known to be sometimes overly diplomatic, but oftentimes the role that I'm serving is as much a cultural ambassador, in one sense as it is in the other sense. And it's managing expectations and knowing when to put pressure on the vendor side to move things along, and also when to try and calm nerves and reassure that everything is going to get done as it will, as it needs to get done when it comes to the clients. And they're anxious because they want to throw a wonderful party. They want to, be sure that everything is perfect as it possibly can be. But I think that so much of the work that I do and the way that I choose to approach this role that I play in the project is that, a wedding is a human experience. And we will do everything possible to make it go as well as it possibly can. But there are things that come up, and we try and mitigate them to the best of our ability. But your enjoyment is not dictated 100% by if it goes perfectly or does it not go perfectly. It's what your mindset is.
This is hard work.
It is not easy, but I am very fortunate to have a majority of clients who are able to get on board and get on board online with that idea, and it makes all the difference.
Well, it looks like you're very confident about your experience and what you do, and it's backed by your background and everything. But it can be a problem to some American couples when they feel like the vendors or the venues or anything is creating problems for nothing, And I'm French. I have this French culture. I'm born and raised here, but I also have business mindset of the Americans. Of yes, I'm always saying this to my clients, which are mostly American or English speaker. I said, if I may give you just a small tip for your wedding organization and planning, you have to deal with people who are yes people, not creating some kind of issue for nothing. Obviously, you cannot do everything for a wedding. You have to follow the experience of your vendors. Usually, they're doing this for your best interest. But the mindset, the idea, it is very important to deal with yes people. I'm kind of obsessed with this.
And what I do and the way that I try to approach this is, obviously people if they are coming to have their wedding in France, they either have been here before and they love coming here, or they have a romantic notion, and that's not to say it's naive or anything, but they have an idea of what France represents. But they also probably know enough to know the bad reputation of dealing with the French. And
we're trying hard to change that.
Well, but the way that I like to present it is to put it in a bit of context, which is that oftentimes, yes, the American culture is one that they'll say yes, and it's also one that tends to maybe overpromise and underdeliver.
Can happen.
Which is very much the opposite in France, and they will be quick to say no, but it's usually not the final answer. And I will oftentimes explain that we might get a no initially, but you have to persist. And you have to think about things from a different angle. And yes, it does mean that it puts the onus of work on you as the client to find the solution, but oftentimes if the vendor is saying no, it's because they are not comfortable with saying yes, because they know what they can deliver and they don't feel comfortable saying yes to something that they're not sure that they can deliver.
Of course.
But when you have a dialogue and you set the stage and you try and explain things, usually you can get to yes. And that's a lot of what it is that I also bring to the project,
Yes.
is this sort of, kind of buffer or amortisseur. And the idea that I'm sort of insulating both sides from the most brutal shocks, and we're getting to an outcome that suits everyone.
Very good definition, I think. I never heard it, so it's very original, but it's true. You have to be diplomatic. It's not all the time problems, of course, but when you come up with this idea of getting married in France or in Europe, you can be very romantic about it. So it's good to have people who understand you, but are like grounded in the vision of, okay, this is how it is, how it's working here, and all that stuff. So you've been doing this for a long time. What do you recommend for your couples or for brides to be willing to get a destination wedding in France? What is the first step?
I think the first step is collecting some information, getting a sense of likes and dislikes, regional preferences, or maybe the type of setting that you're looking for. Are you looking for a city setting? Are you looking for a countryside setting? Is it a romantic chateau? Is it more of a villa?
Yeah.
Are you looking for water views? So kind of painting that picture a bit and bringing together some ideas, not a binder full of pictures that are rigid and a very fixed idea of what it is that you want, but a general idea so that you can start to paint a picture of what it is that you might like. And then my preference is to work with couples as early as possible.
Early.
Because while I do work with couples who maybe have already found their venue, and we're working together to put everything else into place, oftentimes what I do find is sometimes they bite off a bit more than they can chew with the venue they select, and that takes up an overly large part of their overall budget.
That's important too.
And everything else that they want to do maybe doesn't fit as easily in the budget that they have in mind. So by working with a planner early, you can set the stage and look at it from a holistic perspective of I'd like to have this many people, I'd like this type of venue, I'd like to have this many events, these are the types of vendor services that are important to me. And we can look at it from an overall whole to make sure that we're getting as many of those things in there together, as opposed to retrofitting or backing into a budget that's kind of eaten up a lot by a wedding venue that might be beautiful and fantastic, but maybe restricts all the other things that you might want to do on the wedding.
So you have talking about the time frame, what do you recommend? 1 year in advance, 2?
I would say anywhere from 9 to 18 months is broadly, the time frame that I'm working with.
And regarding the budget, do you have a special? I guess you have. If you're talking about the algorithm, you probably have this schedule in your head of exactly what percentage of the budget you're going to allocate to all the vendors, all the services, venues. You already got that in your.
So percentages, no, because it massages a little bit depending on, do they, what are their criteria? What are the things that they put the most importance on? Is it, food and beverage? Is it entertainment? Is it florals? Is it the details? And so I oftentimes will ask questions during my initial consultation to get a sense of what are the things that they're telling me that are important to them, and how do they rank them. And then when I, as a follow-up, present the proposal alongside a sample budget, I will tailor it to the discussion that we've had and fine-tune it. So it's not necessarily you should allocate 10% of your budget to photography and 3% to the wedding cake or what have you. It's more based on the story that they've told me and how do all of those numbers roll up, and to a certain extent, what is the target budget that they've communicated to me, and can we fit in it or can we not? But every wedding is slightly different. Every couple is unique, and while I can leverage a lot of the institutional knowledge that I have, I do like to have these conversations with my couples and present them with a budget guideline that helps them be informed of this is how I view how a wedding budget comes together, and it's always presented as a floor as opposed to a ceiling. But even if we were to stay within this budget, they would have a lovely wedding that would be representative of what they see on the website or on social media. But I think that it's an industry that's maybe notoriously opaque in terms of what pricing is, and so much of the initial conversations that I have with couples is them just not knowing anything, and it's a big discovery for them. So I think that part of what I do, whether and the majority of the people who contact me and majority of people who I have conversations with, it doesn't come through as a project, and that's a little bit by design, because it's very much a question of fit and calibration.
That's important.
But I'm also not looking to do hundreds of events per year. So I'm looking for a tailored number of events per year. But at least I'm providing them with something of value that they can then use as something to inform them as they continue their search, or they decide this is maybe not the right step for me.
I agree with what you said about the fits. I always offer a consultation to get to know my couples. I'm not doing the same thing as you. I'm an officiant, I'm a celebrant, I'm an MC. So it really has to go through a fit.
Yes.
I'm always ending up my calls saying, if I'm dealing with the couple, I say, you already know if I am the right person to do that, because this is only what you need. You need to hear my voice and get to know me. So yeah, I like his vibe, or I don't like it. And those answers are good.
Yes.
It's gonna advance and make you move forward to your day. Because I also always say that despite being the voice of your event, or for a planner, to be behind the scenes, this is their day, not ours.
Yes.
So we just help them. So I think the vibe thing that you're talking about, I agree a lot. So you do all this work preparation going through the day, and you're here on the day, I guess.
Yes.
Do you offer this emotional support as well?
Emotional support and the captain of the ship, or the orchestra conductor, is oftentimes how I describe the role, where we need to make sure that everything is coming together harmoniously, that everyone's staying on the beat, and that you need that person who is playing that role, because otherwise things can get out of sync.
100%.
And so yes, it's true that it's most visible on the day, because
you're the person who knows everything.
Yeah, that's the game time. That's the concert. That's the performance. But obviously, everything going smoothly and everyone, all of the things coming together is the fruit of all of the practice and preparation and everything that we've done upstream. So that's oftentimes why, from a time to time basis, I'll do, a month of coordination. So when I have pockets of time, on my calendar, I will accept, instead of a full planning project, I'll accept a month of coordination project. But I never accept day of coordination where you just show up and you're a warm body, because the utility of that is very limited. Because in order to really have the full benefit of someone who can truly manage the day and contribute and add value, really need to give that person an on-ramp. 100%. So I would definitely say that, if people are, some people don't have the budget, or sometimes people are really great project managers themselves, and so they can get themselves to a certain point, but they know that they want to have that support in the lead up to the day, and they can kind of offload the production of the day, but you need to give your partner, the person who you're going to be working with, an on-ramp, so that they can get as much of those details and get as much of an understanding as possible, and also help maybe correct some things that are less than optimal in your plan, so that you can really make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible.
I agree. The best planners that I've been working with were very transparent and sharing 200% of the information, not keeping anything for themselves, which can show a lack of confidence sometimes with the youngest one, which is normal. But this is the best way to avoid it, is to share everything with all the vendors, because the most they know, the better it's going to go.
Yes.
So
yeah. And so when you receive information, are you prefer to receive all the information as opposed to just the information that pertains to you?
Yes.
Because sometimes I think that there's the concern that, you know, if you inundate all the vendors with, you know, a schedule that's, you know, that has all of the different moving points on there, that it's a lot of it doesn't concern them.
Of course.
And so you're sort of drowning out the pertinent information with all of the rest of it. So it's interesting to know that you prefer to see everything.
I mean, I don't see a conspiracy in everything, of course, but I feel like, me personally, I gather all the information better if I can see that it's part of everything.
Yes.
This is just me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like to have a detailed timeline. Remember, I'm coming from hospitality industry and events.
Fair.
So I like to know where I am entering the stage and where I'm not. I'm more into
who's
ceremony.
coming before you, who's coming after you.
I'm always coming to the venues at least 1 hour prior to the ceremony start, just to know all the vendors and just to see the vibes. I've been communicating with everyone before, but sometimes I meet them for the first time. Sometimes I meet a lot of friends. But it's always better to understand my piece of the puzzle in the whole thing. So.
But I think that that's a fair point, that so much of what everyone brings to the industry, because a lot of the wedding industry is made up of people who have had previous lives in something else, and I think that that's, you know, a lot of people who are in this business bring that to what they do now, and so I think it's, you know, a fair point to say that if you were already in hospitality and had this sense of what is the sequencing, you know, what's happening before, what's happening after, that obviously that informs the way that you approach your work.
Just like you, strategic consulting, I guess that it's, you know, coming from your brain is wired in a way that makes it all easy when you see it from the outside. But, you know, it's a lot of organization and planning. So.
Yes.
Nancy, what are your plans for 2025, for 2030? What do you have in mind? Is there anything you want to share?
2030, I don't know if I'm not a person who thinks that far in advance, but 2025, I'm excited about weddings hopefully coming back to Paris.
Yes.
Obviously after the Olympics, you know, the Olympics year was a great it's shown a huge spotlight on Paris, but it did mean that there weren't that many weddings in Paris this year. I mean, that was my case. I'm not sure if it was the same for you. So I'm looking forward to weddings coming back to Paris. I'm also really enthusiastic about the developments that I've seen in the French hospitality landscape. There are certain groups that have started to develop new young groups like the RL and the Domaine de Fontenille and Paris Society that are getting into this, you know, space of beautiful estate hotels and each with their own identity, but really, you know, high-end properties that are, you know, very dreamy and luxury experiences that would be, you know, fantastic to have weddings at. So continuing to develop relationships with those places. I have some weddings upcoming at some of these venues, but always also looking at what the what are the new things on the market? What are the new venues on the market? In particular, because after you've been doing this for a certain amount of time, you know, you have maybe a wish list of places that you would like to do a wedding at. And you know, there's the Abbaye des Vaux-Ternay that has recently been renovated and reopened, and you know, that's a fantastic place.
Your eyes on that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic place I'd love to do a wedding at. There are, you know, a few others that I have my eye on.
Good.
But people often ask me, what's your favorite venue for a wedding? And for me, it's as if you were to ask a parent, who is your favorite child. You know, there's so many wonderful venues in France, and I've always served all of France, so as much in Paris as, you know, the Paris region, and then all of the regions around, from Brittany to the Alps down to Provence and the Côte d'Azur, so really all of France. And you know, there's so many wonderful venues that I take the lead from my clients of what is it that they're looking for, and I love the search and the investigation that goes into finding the right venue for them.
Very good. So I will live as always in the 2024 world of internet. I will leave all the links of your website. They're down here in the comment section. I will also share your portfolio, which is amazing. I was really amazed about all the venues and the pictures and the villas and the vibe. Really, that's what made me contact you back in the 2020. So thank you again for taking the time to meet me.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to see your 2025 season and 2030.
Yes.
Do you want to say a few last words to the audience?
No, well, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for giving the platform to have these types of exchanges and discussions. And wedding planning, especially, wedding planners, they tend to be very small companies, and we're often in very small offices, and so
Sure.
it's nice to get out and
Get
have
out
these
of the
types of
office.
conversations every once in a while.
Really happy once again. Thank you for being part of the show, and I'll see you in France somewhere.
Yes,
I'm sure.
with
Thank
pleasure.
you again.